Hello BookTube, it's Leanne Cooper here, and today I'm bringing you a very, very belated book review of Revenant Gun by Yoon Ha Lee. So I received an ARC copy of this book back before it came out in mid-2018, and unfortunately it was during my really terrible 6 to 8 month reading slump, and I did not get it read until December of 2018. Finishing this book was like my end of 2018 absolute goal, and I'm really glad I did it. And even though this review is like so irrelevant now because so much time has passed, I'm still going to do it because I received the book and I've done reviews for both the first two books, and I want to complete kind of this little trilogy of videos. So I give this book like 3.5 stars. It is the third book in the Machineries of Empire trilogy by Yoon Ha Lee. It's science fiction. The first book was Nine Fox Gambit, which if you hang around the genre speculative realm of BookTube, you've probably heard of it. This picks up about 9 years after the end of Raven's Stratagem, and it deals with the remnants of the Empire. There are 3 factions that have sprouted since the end of the second book. One of them is a group of Kel, basically under the command of Hexarch Kujo. Kujin is hundreds and hundreds of years old, and we know from previous books that he created the calendrical system, which fuels the exotic technology in this universe. Another faction is a group of mostly loyal Kel and I'm gonna forget their names. Vandan? Is that it? It's 2 of the other factions. They're under one of the famous Kel generals who's still alive, Nesser, and they're loyal to the old calendar system. There's another group of Kel and Shuos who are led by High General Brezin, who is a character from the second book. He's a crash hawk from the second book, and he upholds the new voluntary calendar system that Cheris Judeo created and used to splinter the Hexarchet at the end of Raven's Stratagem. We've got these 3 warring factions. All 3 of them want to control the galaxy. That's pretty much the plot of the book. The biggest thing I can say about this is that we do get to see how the technology works a little bit more intimately in this book. A lot of mysteries or unknown things about the way the calendar works, the way the ships work, the way servitors work are explained in more depth in this book. And that was one of the things I really did like, because I love Yoon Ha Lee's world that he has created in this book, and the technology, it's so cool. However, I was a little disappointed in this book. It's beautifully written. Yoon Ha Lee really can write, and once I got past the first 90 or so pages of kind of setup and just kind of got into the meat of the story, I zipped through this pretty quickly, and I really love his writing style. However, my biggest problem with this book is the points of view, and therefore the subsequent emotional payoff of the characters and the themes. So in the first book, Nine Fox Gambit, this book is told almost entirely from Kel Cheris's point of view, and Kel Cheris's point of view with the ghost of Shuos Judeo in her head. And it's those 2 characters and their interactions with one another which is so powerful in the first book. In the second book, we have Cheris Judeo as a character who is there for most of the on-screen time. I would say, like, well, let's call it 65% of the time, because about 35% of that book was from Hexarch Mikodez's point of view, and I wasn't a huge fan of that, because he was like this, not a new character, but effectively a new character, because we hadn't had his point of view and we hadn't had anything from him, and I wasn't emotionally invested in him, and suddenly 35% of the Raven Stratagem was from his point of view, and I didn't get that. But the other 65%, at least Cheris was on screen. But the book did this thing where it talked about, it was actually being told from another person's perspective while they were interacting with Cheris. And then in this book, it did that again, only it also introduced 3 other points of view, none of which was Mikodez. So like, we put in 35% of the effort of Raven's Stratagem into getting to know Hexarch Mikodez, and then he appears in like one scene in this book. No. So instead we have the first half of this book has a POV from High General Brezin. The second half of this book has a POV from General Inesser. Once Inesser's POV takes over, Brezin's POV disappears. Then we also have a POV from a basically new character. There is a person who has been created by Kujin in this universe to command the Kel, and he has some of Jadeo's memories, but not enough to make him Jadeo, really. He's like this weird blank slate. And then we also have another point of view from a servitor who encounters Cheris and starts working with her. Those parts from Hemiola, the servitor's perspective, are like the smallest part of this book. And again, we're getting Cheris from an outside POV. So basically, the author took the character that we spend a lot of time getting to know, that we're emotionally invested in, and then largely removes them from their own book. And I'm not a fan of that. So I'm not a huge fan of multi-POV books. In this book, I particularly found that I would get to a POV that I really didn't care for, and my instinct would be to put the book down. And I had to fight that instinct for most of the book. Particularly, I'm talking about the clone Jadeo, pseudo-Jadeo POV in this. I can't really go into any more detail about him, but I really didn't find him very interesting as a character. He was very much a blank slate. He really didn't have any memories or personality to make him interesting. It was kind of the point. And unfortunately, he was the primary POV character in this book. All of that, maybe I could forgive, except that the last chapter of this book hinges on an emotional catharsis for Kel Cheris. And it's just like, we finally get her POV again for, I'm going to count, 3 pages. We get her POV again for 3 pages. And the emotional note this book is supposed to end on is from her POV. But we haven't really been with her for 2 books. We've sort of been observing her. We observed her through Raven Stratagem. We got glimpses of her in Revenant Gun. But then we're supposed to end on a cathartic emotional note with her, even though we are so divorced from her as a character. It didn't work for me. It really honestly didn't. And I just kind of felt let down by this book. And I feel bad saying that, because this is the first time a publisher's ever contacted me to give me a book. And also, Nine Fox Gambit is still like one of the best things I read in 2017. I would still highly recommend that book. There's so many people I have tried to get to read that book because I think it's amazing. And unfortunately, this, as a conclusion to the trilogy, just didn't work for me. And most of that had to do with the author's structural choices for the book. I don't get the POV choices. I really genuinely don't. And I do think it overall took really nice writing, really solid writing, and made it weaker. That being said, one thing I can tell you is that Solaris, the publisher, makes gorgeous books. Like, this book is beautiful. It feels really nice to like hold and read and own. The paper quality is gorgeous. Like, that's not usually something I could really care about, to be frank, because I would prefer to read most things on an ebook. But I'm really actually impressed with Solaris as a publisher. I would still recommend the first book in this series. And I think if you are a reader who, well, I don't know how to recommend books 2 and 3, to be honest, because I think if you're not into Kel Cheris and Jadeo as characters, then I think you'll find the first book too frustrating to enjoy it. But if you do really like them as characters, I think you'll find books 2 and 3 too frustrating to enjoy them, if that makes sense. So read at your own risk, but definitely check out the first one. Yeah. Man, I really wish this could be a little bit more upbeat and a little bit more gushy, because, it was definitely more gushy about the second one, the first 2. But I have to be honest, you know? So anyways, if you have any questions about this trilogy or this book in particular, feel free to leave them down below. Let me know if you've read this, what your thoughts of it were, or if you're planning on picking it up. And go ahead and tell me what your favorite, newest science fiction find has been. I'm definitely on the lookout for a new thing in science fiction to read, because I've kind of honestly had a bunch of misses in science fiction lately, and I'd love to have something new to read. So leave that down below in the comments. If you enjoy any of my reviews or my content, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and thanks for watching.